Considering my last video was about The Elder Scrolls 6, it kinda made sense to talk about yet another IP owned by Bethesda. Yes, you guessed it, the video is going to be about Fallout. I mean, truth to be told, it's in the titles, so yeah, not the biggest conundrum in the world. Anyway, I know Fallout 5, or whatever the next one is going to be called, is probably years away from being released, but I like talking about these things. So why the hell not? Time to go into the land of ideas and make-believe and talk about things I would like to see in Fallout 5 based on my experiences from Fallout 3, Fallout New Vegas, and Fallout 4. You might be wondering why there aren't any experiences from Fallout 76. Quite obvious actually, I simply refuse to touch that bloody diarrhea, regardless of the current state of that game. There will be timestamps, so feel free to use them to skip to a section that interests you the most. And before I start, please consider liking and sharing the video and subscribing to the channel. It helps a lot. Alright, let's get started. Technical issues and bugs. One of the biggest and by far the most consistent complaints I had about Fallout 4 has always been its technical state. From launch to the years after release, you could encounter frequent crashes, physics glitches, broken quests, and unstable performance. You might want to tolerate bugs at first, because Bethesda had built their reputation for ambitious world, which means that there will be some hiccups here and there, obviously. But over time, that patience wore thin, especially as familiar problems kept resurfacing in every new update. And to be honest, I think all the credit that they had for any tolerance regarding this matter has vanished. I mean, even in this video, when I was talking to an NPC, the game wasn't displaying his subtitles properly. And how long has it been since the game came out? That's exactly my point. On PC, performance inconsistencies were common, even on strong hardware. Console players also dealt with frame drops, save corruption, and long loading times. What annoys me the most was that many of these bugs were never officially fixed. Instead, the community relied on modders to clean up Bethesda's mess. Updates often made things worse by breaking mods and destabilizing existing saves. The Anniversary Edition reignited this frustration by introducing new technical issues instead of resolving the old ones. Because why would we do that, right? For a game with such a long lifespan, stability should have been priority from the get-go. I personally never expect perfection. This is a very hard thing to achieve, but I do expect basic reliability. And Fallout 4's technical problems can only slowly erode your trust. I would be so bold to say that I feel Bethesda is comfortable shipping broken systems and letting modders fix them later. Safe to say, I don't want to see that stuff in their game ever again. Enough is enough. Shift away from RPG roots. Fallout 4 drifted too far from traditional RPG design. Previous Fallout games emphasized player choice, stat checks, and meaningful role-playing decisions. Fallout 4 stripped much of that away in favor of accessibility. Dialogue system was simplified into a 4-option wheel that often hid what your character would say. Jesus, I still have PTSD from that thing. What that thing did was it made conversations feel vague and unpredictable. Many dialogue choices led to the same outcome, giving you the illusion of choice rather than real agency. I don't know how else to describe the dialogue wheel other than utter failure. This must be nuked immediately. I don't want to see this bullshit ever again, not just in Fallout, but in any game. The removal of skills and traits further weakened character identity. Special stats felt less impactful outside of combat perks. Builds started to blur together, making characters feel interchangeable. At this point, every character is basically looking the same because we all pick the same traits without any drawback. I mean, how interesting is that, especially for long-term replayability? Sure, you can impose your own build restrictions, But at the end of the day, you will always end up making the same character like it was in your previous playthrough. I know because it happened to me many times. So, how to fix this? Well, it's pretty damn obvious. Bring back stuff we had in the New Vegas. It is that simple. I still can't wrap my head around the fact that they didn't take that system and further polished it. Instead, it was just abandoned. What an utter failure. The fully voiced protagonist was also a mistake. Yes, you can say it's cinematic, but it locks you into a specific personality and tone. This made role-playing harder, especially for players who enjoyed imagining their own character. It's cool that people say your name, although maybe it happens once or twice in the whole game, but other than that, it's just a waste of resources. Fallout 4 felt more like an action game with RPG elements than a true role-playing experience, and this shift was deeply disappointing. If Fallout 5 doesn't fix these things on a double, I would be very worried but also disappointed. Settlements. Fun, but flawed. Settlement building was one of the Fallout 4 most ambitious additions. At first, it felt fresh and empowering to rebuild the wasteland. And I admit, I was trying to pimp up my settlements up as much as I could. On top of that, while I was playing the game, I was connecting every settlement to my main base, forming a really cool caravan network. It felt really good. However, I quickly realized how intrusive the system became. See, settlements were tied to core gameplay progression, forcing interaction even if you weren't interested. I mean, who can forget how freaking annoying Preston was? I so wanted to punch him in the face every time he chased after me to give me a Radiant quest. Who the hell thought this was a good idea? I really want to see that person and ask him straight face to face what were they thinking. Speaking of Radiant quests, they were frequently sending you back to defend settlements from repetitive attacks. Even if the settlement had ungodly defense and offensive capabilities, there was still a need to defend the damn thing. What annoyed me the most was the fact that I couldn't make a properly walled-off settlement because enemies were spawning right in the middle of it, which made my defenses pointless. Again, who thought that was a smart thing to do? Resource management for the settlement also became tedious rather than strategic, and building controls were clunky and unintuitive. I always remember making stuff snap properly or making them align properly was such a pain. Next, settlements often felt lifeless, despite the effort you put into them. NPCs lacked meaningful routines or personalities. The system prioritized quantity over depth, encouraging you to build many shallow settlements instead of few rich ones. And what's even worse, settlement content appeared to replace handcrafted towns and quest hubs. Traditional Fallout cities with memorable characters became rarer. You could argue settlements felt like a distraction from exploration and storytelling, and it wouldn't be far away from the truth. What should have been optional content turned out to be a mandatory time waste. Instead of enhancing role-playing, settlements often broke immersion. Don't get me wrong, the idea was strong, but the execution diluted the Fallout experience. Still, after all this criticism, the question is, do I want to see the settlement system in the next Fallout game? And to that question I would say yes, but only if the issues that I have discussed are fixed. Lack of rewarding exploration. Exploration has always been central to Fallout, but for some reason, Fallout's 4 world design caused mixed reactions in me. The map is dense with locations, there is plenty of things to do, but many feel shallow once explored. For example, building often repeat layouts and enemy placements. Loot becomes predictable and unexciting over time. Environmental storytelling exists, but it's less impactful than in the earlier games. Many locations exist solely for combat, with little narrative context. Discovering a new place rarely led to meaningful choices or consequences. So what happened is that exploration, as far as I'm concerned, becomes a checklist rather than adventure. You see things on the map and it's like, oh, I must visit the place in order to complete it, instead of, I wanna visit the place because I might find something interesting there. So the joy of stumbling onto unique quests or characters is reduced. Random legendary enemies replaced handcrafted rewards, which then undermines the sense of discovery. You're pretty much exploring because the map tells you to do it, not because curiosity pushes you forward. In that sense, it seems to me that Fallout 4 prioritizes constant activity over memorable moments. And over time, exploration feels like busy work. You cannot deny that the world looks impressive, but when you scratch beneath the surface, you see there is no depth. Again, quantity replaces quality too often. So for the next Fallout game, what I wanna see is a system where you thrive when you explore because it tells a story instead of being a space filler. UI and UX frustrations. Fallout 4's user interface is yet another frequent source of frustration. It's pretty much obvious they learned nothing from Skyrim. I wonder why Fall UI has over 2.5 million downloads. It's a mystery. I just cannot for the love of God figure out why is that a thing. On a more serious note, for starters, inventory management is cumbersome and inefficient. You constantly scroll through long lists of nearly identical items. Important information is hidden behind extra menus, and sorting options are limited and unintuitive. Speaking of dialogue options, like I mentioned previously, the dialogue wheel hides full responses, leading to accidental choices. This 100% breaks immersion and your trust. So what did people do? Well, they immediately installed a mod that shows the full dialogue. Unfortunately, however, it didn't really matter, since no matter what you choose, it's either yes, sarcastic yes, maybe yes, and no but yes. I mean, come on, give me a break. And then there are crafting menus, cluttered and slow to navigate. Comparing weapons and armor is unnecessarily complicated. On PC, for example, the interface feels designed primarily for controllers. And on console, it still feels dated and sluggish. This just blows my mind how badly UI is designed. I think if you gathered kids from the kindergarten or something like that and gave them the task of making new UI for the Fallout game, I think they would do better. So what happens is, you have to install mods if you wanna enjoy the game, at least a bit. And mods like Fall UI are pretty much essential, which again highlights Bethesda's shortcomings. You would expect that a game this large would demand a clean, flexible interface. Instead, Fallout 4's UI actively works against you. Time spent managing menus outweighs time spent role-playing. The UI feels like a leftover from older design philosophies. And for me, it became a constant annoyance. A modern RPG deserves a modern interface. Bethesda, for crying out loud, go to the Fallout Nexus and check the damned mods. Incorporate it into the next game, or at least reiterate stuff based on the examples given by the community. Stop this madness. It helps no one, and it makes you look bad. Modding and community frustrations. It's pretty obvious the Fallout community is one of the most dedicated modding communities in gaming. And Fallout 4 benefited enormously from fan-made fixes and expansions. However, Bethesda being Bethesda, the way that they are handling updates severely strains this relationship. For example, major updates often break existing mods without warning. Save files become unstable or unusable overnight. Imagine investing 60, 70 hours into a game and you install a new update and the game just tells you, well homie, your save is no more, so might as well restart the game again. Really? That's what you wanna do? Tell me to restart a 60 or 70 hour progress just because your update messed stuff up? Insane. The funny thing here is that this wouldn't happen if they did what, you expect them to do, which to make a functional game, because if you are modding the game, you are pretty much forced to choose between updates you're getting or your modded setup. The latest example of this is the Anniversary Edition, which intensified this issue even more. It offers little value, but it disrupted years of community work. And that's a paradox in itself because Bethesda relies heavily on modders to fix core problems, and yet official updates repeatedly undo that work. It's mind-boggling to me that Bethesda does not understand that Fallout 4 survived this long because of mods, not because of consistent developer support. So you would expect Bethesda to learn from this. But no. The same cycle repeats all over again. There is no trust between developer and community, and that bond gets weakened continuously every single time when a new update is released. It goes without saying that for Fallout 5, this relationship must be crucial. Ignoring modders again would be a massive mistake. Then again, I would be very happy if they ignore the modders completely, but do what the modders are doing, and not the other way around, because that makes absolutely no sense. Crafting, itemization, and legendary item system. I gotta say, Fallout's 4 crafting system is not too shabby, but there are some issues that I need to mention. For example, crafting perks create artificial progression gate. You can't experiment freely without investing heavily into a specific perk tree. Some of you might say it's not a big deal, you get to level 60, 70 anyway, so you can dump all kinds of perks wherever you want, but then some people might say that this can be punishing if you want to make a balanced or roleplay focused build. So rather than skill-based crafting, Fallout 4 relied on perk checks, reducing player agency. The crafting UI is also no great. That shouldn't come as a surprise considering we already said that the whole game's UI is completely messed up. In this case, however, finding specific components is frustrating, and the game does a poor job explaining resource requirements. And yet again, mods stepped in to fix Bethesda's shortcoming. While not directly a crafting issue, legendary item system replaced handcrafted rewards with randomness. And to be honest, the way that it was executed in Fallout 4 makes me wanna vomit. Let me elaborate on this a bit. Instead of earning unique weapons through quests or exploration, legendary gear dropped randomly from special enemies. This essentially stripped items of narrative weight and their identity. For example, you can find a legendary minigun on a random raider, and when that happens, it feels no different than one that you found in a trash pile. We basically lost excitement of discovering iconic, story-linked weapons, because they were replaced with what essentially is a loot roulette. And you quickly realize that the best gear doesn't come from quests, but actually from farming enemies. So what this does is it encourages you to do repetitive gameplay and essentially saves coming. Legendary effects often made no logical sense, which then again breaks immersion. One example that I use is that a pipe pistol, which is the lowest possible tier of weaponry in Fallout 4, can do more damage than a high-tech energy weapon. That is completely absurd. So, balance was all over the place, with certain effects completely overshadowing others. I mean, when you get an effect that gives your weapon ability to fire 2 shots, what do you expect? And as a result, optimal builds became RNG dependent rather than skill or choice based. Another issue with legendary system was undermined exploration and questing. Why would you complete a long quest when you know that a random legendary enemy might drop something better? I mean, yeah, drops are still very randomized, but still, it is plausible that you get lucky and then what's the point of quest rewards? In my mind, they become meaningless, and you often sell whatever you get immediately. Legendary prefixes inflated numbers without changing gameplay, and very few effects alter tactics or playstyle in an interesting way. Instead of meaningful customization, you want to chase raw damage instead. And this is the moment where Fallout 4 was turned into a pseudo-looter shooter, because the traditional sense of progression was lost. This change also reflected very badly on unique weapons, because they no longer felt unique. And once again, mods step in to restore handcrafted gear and rebalance drops. In other words, legendary items felt like a shortcut to artificial replayability, because they padded engagement without adding depth. Finally, itemization is also a mess. Many items feel interchangeable, with only slight stat differences that separate them. As a result, gear upgrades rarely felt exciting. You're constantly replacing items instead of building a lasting loadout. Story-important weapons are often weaker than random drops. This completely destroys narrative payoff. You either sell iconic items minutes after receiving them, or you are hoarding them in your storage chest. Basically, itemization became linear rather than situational. Now, I am a huge fan of crafting in RPGs, and for the next Fallout game, I have a lot of ideas what to do with the system. First of all, crafting needs to be independent from perks. I would rather scavenge for items and materials around the world and then bring the materials to a specialized weaponsmith or armorsmith in order to make the item I want. This would introduce gold sync, or in Fallout's case, cap sync, where you can spend your caps in a meaningful way. Next thing, unique gear should, or rather must be memorable, earned, and tied to the world. Give me an option to either upgrade existing unique items or let me craft my own unique gear. Or even better, implement unique effects on the weapons that I have crafted. That way you are giving longevity to these unique items and they feel unique again. You did that quest to get a unique sword or a automatic rifle or whatever for a reason, not to be put in a freaking storage chest, but actually being used and profiting of it. As far as legendary system goes, the way to fix this is to simply take a look at the mod called Legendary Modifications. There are many versions of it and the ideas there are really well fleshed out. For example, you get a legendary item drop. Cool. Now you have two options. Either use it immediately because it fits you, or you scavenge the item because you want to extract the legendary power. By doing so, you now have access to this power and you can use it to craft your own items by slapping the legendary power on it, provided you have the necessary materials to craft it. Next thing would be to determine who drops these items. Obviously, it wouldn't be some random mob that mutates, but rather a boss that you can find at the end of a facility or a dungeon or whatever. This way, it gives some gravitas to the item. You didn't encounter it randomly, you did a whole dungeon and as a reward, you actually received the item. So as you can see, you don't need a lot to do here, like I've said many times. You just check what the modders are doing and you reiterate it. There is no shame in doing so because you already have a proof how many times people downloaded this particular mod that players actually enjoy. So capitalize on it. Embrace it and make it a part of your game. It can only do you good. I need the karma and reputation system back. One of the biggest things missing from Fallout 4 was a meaningful karma and reputation system. In Fallout New Vegas, your actions had consequences that followed you throughout the game. Helping or harming factions didn't just change a number, it changed how the world treated you. NPCs reacted differently based on your reputation. Entire quest lines opened or closed depending on your choices. Wearing faction armor could get you attacked on sight. Your decisions mattered long after the quest ended. And what Fallout 4 did? Well, in Fallout 4, most choices reset once the quest was over. The world rarely acknowledged your behavior. You could help everyone without real consequences. This, in my mind, removed tension and moral weight from decision-making. Being good or being evil becomes cosmetic rather than systemic. New Vegas also handled morality with nuance. Actions weren't simply good or bad. You could be loved by one faction and hated by another. This created complex role-playing opportunities. You weren't playing a hero or a villain. You were surviving in a political wasteland. Fallout 4, on the other hand, abandoned this complexity in favor of player convenience. Without karma or reputation, role-playing lost structure. Choices felt safe and reversible. It seems to me that developers don't understand that Fallout universe thrives on consequences. The wasteland should remember what you did. And Fallout 5 has to bring back a visible, reactive karma and faction reputation system. Actions should lock paths, not unlock everything. NPCs should judge you, fear you, or trust you based on your history. New Vegas proved this system works, and Fallout 5 should build on it, not ignore it. Power armor. Spectacle over progression. Fallout 4 reimagined power armor as a walking tank, and visually, it is impressive. I'd be a liar if I said I didn't like it. I remember encountering it for the very first time when you grab it from that vertibird, take that minigun, and then eventually you fight that really angry Deathclaw. Thing is, this change came with the major downsides. And the biggest issue is how early you gain access to it. I mean, sure, receiving a full power armor in the opening hours was amazing, but at the same time, it completely destroyed the sense of progression. Power armor used to be an endgame reward, or something you earned. In Fallout 4, it becomes a tutorial tool. And in my opinion, this cheapens its value and mystique. Instead of feeling legendary, it feels disposable. The Fusion Core system was meant to balance this, but it just emphasized on this problem and enlarged it, so to speak. You see, Fusion Cores are initially presented as a rare resource, but they quickly become abundant. You can find them everywhere. Not to mention, you take proper perks and they essentially last forever. And once you are in this particular situation, the limitations of power armor, if there were any to begin with, disappear completely. Power armor shifts from a strategic choice to a default solution. And what's even worse, combat balance suffers as a result. Enemies are rarely designed to counter the power armor effectively, and this leads to a power fantasy that overwhelms challenge. Difficulty becomes inconsistent and shallow. Additionally, you can sneak in the damn thing. I mean, come on, man, really? Sneaking in a power armor? Give me a break. Customizing power armor also lacks meaningful depth. While you can modify power armor extensively, most upgrades are linear stat improvements. Yes, you have a jetpack, that's true, but that's an exception, not a rule in this case. Pretty much, there are no real trade-offs. You just build towards maximum efficiency. Also, power armor dominates other armor systems. Once you have it, regular armor becomes irrelevant. In my mind, this reduces variety and invalidates many item choices, because regular armor just feels like underwear that you need to have in order to put your regular clothes on, which is the power armor in this case. Next issue I have with it is how common it is to find it around the world. Raiders and other minor factions just casually wear it, undermining its lore significance. Power armor stops feeling like a rare pre-war tech and starts feeling mass-produced. And to tell you the truth, this erodes world building. Another thing that bugs me is the maintenance of power armor and training to use it are also oversimplified. Earlier Fallout games treated power armor as a complex and specialized asset. Remember how long it took you to get it in Fallout 3? In Fallout 4, this barrier no longer exists. Apparently, anyone can use it instantly. And this further reduces immersion. Finally, power armor becomes isolated from role-playing systems. Factions barely react to you while you're wearing it. NPCs don't fear you or respect you. And the world doesn't respond to it in a meaningful way. Power armor basically exists as a mechanical feature, not a narrative one. And this game turned it into a spectacle. It's powerful, it's flashy, it's accessible, but it lost what made it special. So naturally for Fallout 5, power armor needs progression, a feeling of scarcity, and consequence to feel legendary again. Removing features and then selling them back as DLC. One of the most frustrating trends in Fallout 4, but also in general in gaming, is removing features that already existed in previous games, only to introduce them later through paid DLC. So let's take Fallout franchise, for example. Remember how we used to make ammo in New Vegas? Well, that's gone now, but you can get it through a DLC, only $4.99. This particular policy means, at least in my mind, that you are withholding content on purpose, which means that you are not improving the game, you're just dicing and slicing it into small parts just to sell them later on. Systems that you expected at launch are suddenly locked behind a DLC or expansion. Settlement depth, world building, survival mechanics, and even meaningful role-playing systems were noticeably thin in the base game. And then DLC arrives to quote-unquote fix these gaps, but for a price. To me, this doesn't feel like expansion or a DLC or anything like that. It feels like restoration. You're paying money to restore stuff that we already had. Survival mode is also a good example. Earlier Fallout games already experimented with harsher survival mechanics. And what Fallout 4 does? Well, Fallout 4 launched without that, only to add survival mode later. While it is a welcome addition, it highlights how incomplete the base experience feels like. Automatron and Contraptions Workshop added mechanical depth that arguably should have been present from day one. Far Harbor, on the other hand, stood out precisely because it actually added depth, choice, and writing, which many players noticed, and then compared it to the base game. As a result, you can see the gap in quality clearly, and that just hurts the whole sentiment, or rather the experience you had prior to having access to Far Harbor. This approach is something that I really dislike. You feel like you were paying to get back features you already had years ago. The base game felt streamlined to make room for monetization improvements. And instead of building forward, Fallout 4 often rebuilt backwards. And once again, mods stepped in to restore missing systems for free, making paid DLC feel even more questionable. I just don't understand how developers don't see that the Fallout franchise thrives on iteration, not subtraction. Fallout 5 cannot repeat this mistake. Core gameplay systems must ship complete, with all the previous features ready at day one. DLC should only expand the world with new locations, stories, and features that haven't been seen before, and not act as a finishing agent in order to pack everything in some kind of a GOTY edition. If Fallout 5 launches without features Fallout already mastered in the past, no amount of post-launch content will fix that perception. It just feels scummy. Miscellaneous things. While I'm not directly mentioning story, characters, and everything else that isn't part of a gameplay mechanic, I would like to be very clear, they are not great. I think everyone knows and sees that they are problematic. Fixing gameplay features and not doing anything about other things, well, it's pretty obvious it won't generate a good outcome. All aspects need to be addressed properly because one doesn't work without the other. My opinion is that after the disaster that is Fallout 76, Fallout franchise is not in a great shape. It needs something to kickstart it. Fallout TV series is doing something in that department, which is cool, but I'm more interested in the next game. Long have we waited for a sequel built on the foundation of Fallout New Vegas, and instead we got Fallout 4. And to be honest, it felt disappointing. Fallout franchise is something I really like, and to be honest with you, it kinda breaks my heart a little bit seeing what's going on because the potential is endless. And not capitalizing on its potential is just a huge waste. That's why I'm making this video, to raise awareness, to tell developers that we, the fans, we are still here, but you gotta give us something back. We can't give endless support forever without getting something in return. To conclude, the next Fallout needs to be RPG first, a shooter second, and a sandbox third. Only then, when all these things are set up properly, will reach greatness. And if this doesn't happen, like I described, well, there is nothing to expect from this franchise because we will be essentially getting the same. So what's the bloody point in making Fallout 5 if you're not going to fix problems that we have in Fallout 4? I mean, I know what's the point, but I don't want to say it out loud. Maybe this is something what's keeping my hopes up that we will get a decent game with proper mechanics and all that good stuff. Anyway, let me know in the comments what you want to see in the next Fallout game. What features do you want to see? Do you think my ideas are good? Comment section is there for a reason. I read all of them and I'm very happy to interact there with you guys. So feel free to write your ideas. Once again, thanks very much for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, consider liking the video and subscribing for more discussions like this. That's it from me, until the next one.